Marcus Johnson adjusted his rearview mirror and checked the delivery schedule clipped to his visor. The aging van groaned as he shifted into drive, another day beginning like countless others. At 45, he knew every pothole on Chicago's downtown streets, every doorman who'd wave him through, every elevator that moved too slowly for his tight schedule. "Morning, Mrs. Patterson," he called to the elderly woman waiting at the corner pharmacy. She smiled and waved, recognizing his blue van with its peeling magnetic signs. The prescription bottles rattled in their organized compartments behind him. Diabetes medication for the law firm on LaSalle Street, heart pills for the accounting office, blood pressure meds for executives who probably made more in a week than he did in months. His phone buzzed. A text from his dispatcher. New route added. Millennium Corporate Center. Executive floor. Marcus stared at the message. The Millennium Corporate Center. His building. The 15-story monument to capitalism that he'd inherited 6 months ago from Uncle Theodore, a man he'd met exactly twice in his life. "Honest work is worth more than easy money," his grandmother's voice echoed in his memory. She'd raised 5 children alone during the Depression, scrubbing floors in the same downtown buildings where executives now paid him to deliver their medication. He'd tried to refuse the inheritance, sat in that lawyer's office, shaking his head while they explained the will. Theodore had been watching him from afar, apparently, liked that Marcus worked with his hands, never asked for handouts, treated everyone with respect regardless of their bank account. "Why me?" Marcus had asked. "Because you're the only one in the family who wouldn't sell it immediately," the lawyer had said. Now the building sat there, generating enough rental income to buy 10 delivery vans every month. His accountant kept calling about investment opportunities, tax shelters, executive positions, but Marcus still showed up to work every morning, because stopping felt like betraying everything his grandmother had taught him. He pulled into traffic, the van's engine coughing. The diabetes medication was needed by 9:30. Someone's life depended on him doing his job right, regardless of what other responsibilities waited in his name. "You don't owe the world your poverty," his grandmother had also said, but she'd lived in a different time, when the lines between right and wrong seemed clearer. The downtown skyline loomed ahead, glass and steel reaching toward gray morning clouds. Somewhere in that maze of wealth and power stood his building, filled with people who'd never looked twice at a delivery driver. People who'd never imagined that the man in the worn uniform driving the rusty van owned the very ground they walked on. Marcus gripped the steering wheel tighter. Today he'd enter his own building for the first time since the inheritance papers were signed. Today he'd see what kind of world he'd accidentally become part of. The GPS directed him toward the financial district. The Millennium Corporate Center waited, its pristine facade hiding secrets he wasn't sure he wanted to discover. The Millennium Corporate Center rose before him like a temple to ambition. Italian marble gleamed in the morning light, and Marcus could see his reflection distorted in the polished granite columns flanking the entrance. The smell hit him as soon as he stepped inside. Gourmet coffee from the executive cafe mixing with expensive perfumes and the faint scent of leather from briefcases that cost more than his monthly salary. His delivery bag felt heavier as he approached the reception desk. The diabetes medication inside was routine cargo, but walking through these halls as both owner and servant created a weight he hadn't expected. "Excuse me." The voice cut through the ambient murmur of executive conversations. Marcus turned to see a young man in a crisp security uniform approaching. Derek Mitchell, according to his name tag, appeared to be in his late 20s, with perfectly styled hair and shoes that reflected the lobby's chandelier. "You delivering something?" Derek's eyes swept over Marcus's worn uniform and scuffed work boots. "Prescription delivery for the 15th floor," Marcus replied, holding up his clipboard. Derek's smile was sharp as broken glass. "People like you use the service entrance." The words hung in the air between them. Around the lobby, conversations continued. Heels clicked against marble. Elevators chimed, but Marcus felt the weight of every gaze that turned their way. "I'm sorry." Marcus kept his voice level. "Service entrance. Around back? You don't walk through the main lobby looking like..." Derek gestured at Marcus's appearance with undisguised contempt. "This is a professional building. We have standards." Marcus noticed how Derek's posture changed when a woman in an expensive suit walked past. The young man's chest puffed out slightly, his voice carrying further than necessary, playing to an audience that probably didn't care about his existence any more than they cared about Marcus's. "The elevator's right there," Marcus said quietly. "Not for you." Derek stepped closer, his cologne overwhelming the space between them. Service workers use service entrances. That's how civilized buildings operate. Unless you'd prefer, I called the police about trespassing. The threat landed exactly as Derek intended. Marcus saw other delivery workers and maintenance staff watching from the edges of his vision, everyone understanding the rules that weren't written anywhere, but were enforced with military precision. Marcus adjusted his delivery bag and nodded. Where's the service entrance? Derek's satisfaction was immediate and visible. Around back, loading dock. You'll take the service elevator to whatever floor you need. And next time, don't waste my time explaining the obvious. As Marcus walked back toward the street, he heard Derek's voice behind him, louder now, clearly performing for anyone within earshot. Some people don't understand boundaries. Good thing we have security to maintain proper standards. The service entrance smelled like industrial cleaning supplies and exhaust fumes. Marcus stood in line behind two other delivery workers, both wearing the same expression of resigned acceptance he felt settling into his own features. His building, his lobby, his marble floors that Derek protected from people like him. 3 weeks passed, and the service entrance became as familiar as Marcus's own driveway. Every delivery to the Millennium Corporate Center followed the same humiliating routine. Derek's pointed stare, the forced march around the building, the cramped service elevator that reeked of bleach and broken dreams. But Marcus wasn't just delivering medication anymore. He was watching. The elderly man who delivered office supplies struggled up 15 flights of service stairs because Derek had declared the service elevator under maintenance, though Marcus could see it working fine when building executives used it for their gym bags. The young woman who brought flowers for the lobby arrangements waited 40 minutes in the loading dock because Derek was too busy to approve her entry. These stairs are going to kill me, wheezed Joe, the supply delivery driver, as they climbed together toward the 10th floor. His face was red, sweat staining his uniform. Why don't you complain? Marcus asked. Joe laughed bitterly. To who? Derek's got connections. His stepfather's some city councilman. You complain about Derek, you lose the contract. Simple as that. Marcus watched Derek through the service corridor's small window, seeing him laugh with building executives in the main lobby. The same man who forced elderly workers to climb dangerous stairs was sharing jokes with people who had never carried anything heavier than a briefcase. Marcus tried leaving anonymous suggestions in the building's feedback box, subtle recommendations about treating all workers with dignity. Nothing happened. He tried calling the property management company, speaking generally about service worker conditions. They thanked him for his concern and promised to look into it. Derek's authority seemed unshakable. His informal policies had become law through repetition and fear. No one questioned why service workers deserved less dignity than anyone else walking through those marble halls. You're new to this building. Marcus looked up from his clipboard to find a woman in her 30s watching him from the service corridor doorway. Her business suit was professional but not expensive, her expression thoughtful rather than dismissive. Been delivering here about a month, Marcus replied carefully. Sarah Chen, property manager. She extended her hand, studying his face with an intensity that made him uncomfortable. You look familiar. Have we met before? Something in her tone suggested this wasn't casual conversation. Marcus shook her hand, noting how she glanced around the service area before continuing. I've been reviewing building policies lately, Sarah said, her words measured, especially regarding access protocols. There's been some discussion among ownership about modernizing our approach to service providers. Marcus felt his pulse quicken. Ownership? Yes, well, new ownership brings new perspectives sometimes. Sarah's eyes never left his face. People who understand that a building's reputation depends on treating everyone with respect. The loading dock around them was dimly lit, filled with the echoes of delivery trucks and the distant hum of the building's mechanical systems. Sarah moved closer, lowering her voice. I've been documenting certain irregularities in our security protocols, unofficial policies that don't align with our actual procedures. She paused. The challenge is knowing who to report these findings to. Irregularities? Marcus asked. Forced detours? Arbitrary elevator restrictions? Unnecessary delays for service providers? Sarah's voice carried a weight of careful documentation. Not the kind of behavior that could expose the building to liability issues if the right person knew about it. Derek's voice echoed from the main corridor, berating someone about proper procedures. Sarah's expression tightened. He has protection, political connections, makes people afraid to speak up. She handed Marcus a business card. Sometimes change requires patience. And the right moment, Marcus pocketed the card, understanding they'd just begun a conversation that couldn't be finished in a loading dock. Sarah's call came during Marcus's lunch break, her voice tight with urgency. "Can you meet me at the coffee shop on Franklin? I found something you need to see." 20 minutes later, she slid a manila folder across the small table between them. Inside were copies of security reports, incident logs, and maintenance schedules that made Marcus's stomach clench. 3 assaults in the parking garage over the past 6 months, Sarah said quietly. All unreported to police, all covered up. Marcus scanned the documents. Derek's handwriting was everywhere. Fabricated inspection dates, fictional security rounds, maintenance requests that were never submitted. Where real incidents should have been documented, there were only lies. The cameras in the garage, Sarah continued. Derek claimed they were broken, told management he'd scheduled repairs. But look at this. She pointed to a maintenance log. No repair requests were ever filed. The cameras have been down for 8 months because Derek never did his job. People were attacked. 2 women leaving late from work. 1 delivery driver beaten and robbed. Sarah's voice was barely above a whisper. Derek buried the reports to hide his negligence, told the victims that filing police reports would complicate their employment status. Marcus felt the folder's weight like lead in his hands. This wasn't just discrimination anymore. Derek wasn't just humiliating service workers. He was putting everyone at risk to cover his own incompetence. "The liability exposure is enormous," Sarah said. "If the real owners knew what was happening in their building." Marcus met her eyes across the table, understanding passing between them like an electric current. The discovery came by accident. Marcus was waiting in the loading dock when he overheard Derek's conversation with Rosa, who ran the family bakery that supplied pastries to the building's cafe. $50 a week, Derek was saying, his voice casual but threatening. "Security fee keeps your deliveries running smooth." Rosa's English was limited, but her fear was universal. "I already pay building. Contract says." "Contract doesn't cover security considerations." Derek stepped closer. "Things happen to vendors who don't appreciate protection. Deliveries get delayed. Health inspectors get called. You understand?" Marcus watched through the service window as Rosa reached into her apron with shaking hands, counting out crumpled bills. Derek pocketed the money with the satisfaction of routine. Over the following days, Marcus witnessed the pattern repeat. The courier service paid Derek $20 weekly to avoid package inspection delays. The maintenance company's supervisor handed over $30 to prevent code violation reports. Even the food truck outside the building contributed to Derek's private tax. "It's been going on for months," Sarah confirmed when Marcus told her. "I wondered why some vendors seemed so nervous around security." Derek's created his own revenue stream. Marcus calculated the numbers. Derek was collecting hundreds of dollars every week from people who could barely afford it. Small business owners, immigrants, families trying to build something honest, all paying tribute to avoid Derek's manufactured obstacles. The weight of systematic corruption pressed down on Marcus like the city's gray sky. Marcus was delivering medication to the 15th floor when he heard Derek's voice echoing from the executive bathroom. "Do it again." The whole thing. Marcus paused at the corridor's edge, seeing Maria Rodriguez on her knees beside a bucket of soapy water. At 60, she moved with the careful precision of someone whose body had been breaking down for years. 3 jobs grinding away at joints that had never known rest. "But I just cleaned," Maria began. "Did I ask for your opinion?" Derek loomed over her, his voice carrying the particular cruelty reserved for those who couldn't fight back. "You need to learn your place here. Start over." The bathroom was spotless. Marcus could see his reflection in the polished fixtures, smell the sharp scent of industrial disinfectant that Maria had applied perfectly just minutes before. But Derek stood there with his arms crossed, watching her arthritic hands shake as she reached for the cleaning supplies again. Silent tears mixed with the harsh chemical smell as Maria began scrubbing floors that didn't need cleaning. Her breathing was labored, her movements painful, but Derek's satisfied smirk never wavered. "Character is revealed in how you treat those who can do nothing for you." His grandmother's voice filled Marcus's memory with absolute clarity. Marcus's hands clenched into fists. Every instinct screamed at him to intervene, to end this deliberate torture of an elderly woman whose only crime was needing work to survive. But revealing himself now would change everything, and Derek's cruelty would continue with or without witnesses. The sound of Maria's quiet sobbing echoed off bathroom tiles, each echo a judgment on Marcus's inaction. Derek's phone rang as he stood in the building's lobby, his voice carrying across the marble space with the confidence of someone who believed himself untouchable. "Yeah, Dad, I got it handled," Derek said, pacing near the reception desk. "When you keep the poor in their places, they stay where they belong." Simple psychology. Brittany had come to surprise Derek with lunch, but she froze at the building's entrance as his words reached her. Through the glass doors, she could see her boyfriend of 8 months laughing into his phone. "These service workers, they're like dogs. Show them who's alpha, they fall in line. Had this old cleaning lady crying yesterday. Perfect example of proper hierarchy." Brittany's hand trembled against the door handle. This was the man who brought her flowers, who talked about building a future together, who seemed so professional and responsible. "Trust me, intimidation works. My girlfriend's father owns half the companies in this building. He understands that someone needs to keep the riffraff in line." The casual mention of her father's business interests, the reduction of human beings to animals to be dominated. Brittany felt sick. She'd never heard Derek speak this way about anyone. Inside the building, whispered conversations were spreading among the staff. Sarah Chen had been quietly documenting complaints, and other employees were beginning to find their courage. The cleaning crew was comparing stories. Food service workers were sharing Derek's extortion demands. Brittany turned and walked away, Derek's laughter echoing behind her through glass and steel. The confrontation erupted in the lobby at noon, when the building was fullest. Brittany's voice cut through executive conversations like a blade. "Oh, you're disgusting, Derek. How you talk about people, how you treat them, I won't be part of it." Every eye in the marble space turned toward them. Derek's face went white as Brittany continued, her voice rising. "Keeping people in their places? Making elderly women cry for your entertainment? You're everything that's wrong with people like us." She threw his apartment key at his feet and walked out, leaving Derek standing alone under the crystal chandelier while dozens of witnesses absorbed every word. Derek's response was swift and vicious. By evening, he'd fired 3 cleaning staff members for performance issues. He banned the bakery from making deliveries, claiming security concerns. The maintenance company received notice that their contract was under review for violations. Marcus watched it all unfold with growing horror. Every worker Derek targeted was someone who'd witnessed his humiliation, someone who might talk, someone vulnerable enough to destroy without consequences. Maria hadn't shown up for work in 2 days. When Marcus asked other cleaning staff, they whispered that Derek had threatened to call immigration services if she ever set foot in the building again. Standing in his own service corridor, watching Derek's reign of terror destroy innocent lives, Marcus felt the crushing weight of his own complicity. His secret keeping had protected no one. His patience had enabled a monster. Derek's plan was simple and desperate. If he couldn't control the narrative anymore, he'd eliminate the witnesses, starting with the delivery driver who'd been watching everything with those judgmental eyes. The parking garage was empty when Derek approached Marcus's van with a box of stolen office supplies, items he'd taken from storage specifically for this purpose. Security cameras had been broken for months, giving him freedom to plant evidence without fear of discovery. He opened the van's back doors and shoved the box inside, behind Marcus's medical delivery cases. Tomorrow he'd discover the theft during a routine security check, call the police, and watch the troublesome delivery driver disappear into the criminal justice system. But Derek didn't know about the repair order Marcus had quietly submitted weeks earlier. The security cameras Derek thought were broken had been replaced by a company Marcus had hired personally, their feeds now recording directly to an off-site server. Every movement was captured in high definition, Derek's face clearly visible as he forced open the van, his hands placing stolen goods inside, his satisfied expression as he closed the doors and walked away. Sarah Chen found the footage the next morning during her routine security review. She stared at the screen, watching Derek commit a felony in real time. The timestamp showed last night, just hours after Derek had announced an emergency building meeting to address ongoing security concerns. The moment of truth had arrived. The conference room on the 20th floor had never held such a diverse audience. Building management sat alongside security staff. Service workers stood next to executives, all summoned by Derek's urgent email about a serious security breach that affects everyone. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Chicago's financial district, the morning sun casting long shadows across the polished conference table. Derek stood at the head of the room, his confidence restored by what he believed was his masterstroke. "Thank you all for coming," Derek began, his voice carrying the authority he'd fought so hard to maintain. "We have a thief among us." Marcus stood near the back wall, his delivery uniform marking him as an outsider among the suits and business attire. Sarah Chen sat at the table, her laptop open, fingers hovering over the keyboard. "Yesterday evening, I discovered stolen office supplies in a delivery vehicle," Derek continued, his eyes finding Marcus in the crowd. "Supplies that went missing from our storage areas over the past several weeks." Murmurs rippled through the room. Derek's smile grew wider. "The perpetrator has been using his access to our building to systematically steal from the companies that employ all of you. I have evidence, and I've already contacted the police." The silence that followed was heavy as lead. Derek waited for gasps, for outrage, for vindication. Instead, Marcus stepped forward from the back of the room. "Before you call anyone," Marcus said quietly, "there's something you should know." He reached into his jacket and withdrew a manila envelope. From it, he extracted legal documents that crinkled in the conference room's perfect silence. "I'm Marcus Johnson," he said, his voice steady and clear, "and I own this building." The words hung in the air like smoke. Derek's expression froze, his mouth slightly open, his hand still raised toward the phone. Marcus placed the ownership documents on the conference table, where everyone could see them. Property deeds, inheritance papers, legal transfers, all bearing his name, all stamped and notarized. "I've been making deliveries here for weeks," Marcus continued, "watching how my building operates, how my employees are treated." Derek's face transformed from triumph to horror as the magnitude of his error crashed over him. The man he'd humiliated, threatened, and framed was his ultimate boss. The room remained silent except for the hum of ventilation and the distant sounds of Chicago traffic 20 floors below. Every eye moved between Marcus and Derek, understanding the complete reversal of power that had just occurred. Derek's legs seemed to give way slightly. His hand gripped the conference table for support. 2 months later, the Millennium Corporate Center hummed with a different energy. Marcus walked through the main lobby carrying his delivery bag, nodding to the executives who now knew him as both colleague and boss. "Good morning, Mr. Johnson," called the receptionist. "Maria wanted to see you when you have a moment." Marcus found Maria Rodriguez in her new office on the 3rd floor, reviewing schedules with her custodial team. At 60, she carried herself with the dignity of someone whose worth had finally been recognized. The nameplate on her desk read, "Maria Rodriguez, Custodial Supervisor. My granddaughter starts college next month," Maria told him, her eyes bright with pride. "Full scholarship to Northwestern. She wants to study business management. She'll be excellent at it," Marcus replied. "She learned from the best." Down the hall, Derek Mitchell was training new security staff on respectful interaction protocols. His uniform bore no special insignia now. He was learning humility, one conversation at a time. The sensitivity training had been mandatory, but the real education came from working directly with the people he'd once terrorized. "Everyone who enters this building deserves courtesy," Derek was saying to the new recruit. "Everyone. No exceptions." The words came easier now, though Marcus knew the transformation was ongoing. Second chances required daily commitment. Sarah Chen appeared in the hallway, tablet in hand, her new title of operations director evident in how staff looked to her for guidance. "The quarterly satisfaction survey results are in," she reported. "Employee morale is up 40%. Service worker complaints are down to 0. Marcus nodded, but his attention was drawn to the lobby windows where the afternoon sun cast patterns across marble floors that now welcomed everyone equally. The building's culture had shifted from hierarchy to community, from intimidation to respect. "Why do you still make deliveries?" Sarah asked. "You could hire someone else." Marcus adjusted his delivery bag, feeling the familiar weight of medications that people needed to survive. "Because this is who I am," he said simply. "The building doesn't change that." Outside, Chicago's financial district continued its relentless pace, but inside the Millennium Corporate Center, something fundamental had transformed. Dignity was no longer a privilege reserved for those who could afford it. Respect was the standard, not the exception. Marcus walked toward the main elevator, where a sign now read, "All building users welcome." The service entrance remained open for those who preferred it, but choice had replaced coercion. The afternoon deliveries waited, and Marcus Johnson, building owner and prescription driver, stepped into his elevator with the satisfaction of work well done.